everybody. This is Mark Steiner, and welcome to
Hey, Mark Steiner.
Our source for cool jazz and more.
How you doing?
WEAA 88.9 FM. In the second hour of our program today, we're going to talk to folks from Greater Homewood Community Corporation about development and different development ideas for Baltimore and the work that they do. And we're going to be talking with a wonderful man here, Dr. Springer, who is one of the great organists of the world here at Morgan State University. We're going to explore his work and the work of African Americans in classical music. All that's in the second hour. First, we look at the death, once again, of Freddy Gray and all the protests in Baltimore, how the media is covering the situation, where it goes from here, how this is exploding, and what is happening, what the facts are that we know on the ground. Before we get to all that and our day in history, is WEAA's Beverly Burke with this morning's headlines. Then we'll be right back.
Go test them down, folks. Mark Steiner Show.
Community activists that have been in the streets there every day. The Reverend Hubert Brown's in the studio. He's been there every day as well. And we are joined by Tawanda Jones on the phone, of course, the sister of Tyrone West, who's been organizing these West Wednesday protests for the last 2 years and been leading the struggle here in Baltimore, really, to demand accountability. Tawanda, I'm glad you could join us for a minute by phone. I appreciate it. Megan Sherman joins us. She's producer at Real News Network, who's been covering this with some intensity. And Megan, good to have you with us as well.
Thanks for having me.
Tim Wilson is here, co-director of On Our Shoulders, and joining us here in the studio is Ray Cook, who is the founder and co-director of On Our Shoulders. Good to see him back in the studio once again, and Tim here as well. And James MacArthur is here, who's a blogger for the Baltimore Spectator, who spent months in jail in 2014 following a standoff with the police, and has been doing his street reporting like no other. He gets in the street and tells his stories on the spot at the moment from where he's sitting. So good to have you all here in the studio.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. So you all were there last night, and I think I asked you, James, just a moment ago, I said, who was arrested? And you were saying last night. What happened last night?
I arrived there moments after the arrest. If I were there early, I probably would have been snatched up too, because, you know, what I do is a very deeply immersive version of reporting, and everyone else is standing in the crowd taking pictures. Well, I want to rise above it, literally, just for a better photography. It's for nothing else. And, you know, the police don't have the right to tell me what kind of story I can tell. I mean, there was no compelling law enforcement reason to arrest me. And from what I understand, it was another incident of a quote-unquote barricade breach. But again, I know Payam was standing next to me with our backs facing the police with cameras in our hands. So we're A, we're not threatening them. B, we're not doing anything nefarious. It's obvious what we're doing. And what occurred when we were snatched up, I can tell you, is no different than what we did Saturday with no problems from the police. It's all of a sudden, they are escalating it. They are ramping up tensions by not knowing what to do. It almost seems like the pressure is squeezing them, so now they're bursting.
Tawanda, I know you have a short time with us because you've got to go back to your classroom and teach, but I want you to talk to us here and our listeners about the continuity for you between where you started because of your brother's murder, Tyrone West, and where we are today, and your continuing struggle and how you got in the midst of this.
Wow.
Yes, and thanks for having me this morning.
Always a pleasure.
And good morning to everyone in the studio and on the phone. But nevertheless, we've been in the struggle since July 18, 2013, when my brother was brutally murdered. And before my brother was brutally murdered, we've been in this struggle for decades, right here in Baltimore City. You know, and when Anthony Anderson was brutally murdered by the same unit that brutally murdered my brother, you know, it just disgusts me. And I told them that we're in a state of emergency. They didn't believe me when we were at that town hall meeting when the DOJ was here. And I let them know, you're coming here with the Band-Aid, and we have life-threatening wounds right now. It just disgusts me that I feel like if they would have done something in Anthony Anderson case by holding these officers, his case was ruled a homicide.
Right.
You know, and if they would have stepped up, the man, all of them, and they would have got charges put on these officers, then, you know, the accountability level will be there, and whereas though they would think before they go and brutalize us.
That's true.
And I feel like the work that we literally been doing is like almost in vain. We're there peacefully week after week, and town meeting after town meeting there, advocating for all the victims of police brutality. And then poor Freddy Gray, now you can't even walk down the street and make eye contact. And he was brutally murdered, and they still haven't given a reason why they pulled this guy when he stopped him. You know, it's ridiculous.
And Megan, you've been covering this intensely and been involved in these things yourself as an activist. So talk about what you've been seeing and your perspective on the demonstrations of the last several days.
Okay. Hi, Mark, by the way.
Oh, good to have you here, always.
Yeah, so basically what I've seen is just, it's really similar to Ferguson in some ways. Like, basically community members are really,
That's right, you covered Ferguson as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Really similar to what I saw when I was in Ferguson. Folks are really tired of the treatment that they've been getting from law enforcement, especially, like, folks don't know that the Gilmore Homes area is, like, one of the most heavily policed neighborhoods in Baltimore. And so, I mean, the Western District is literally 3 or 4 blocks away from the housing project. And so, I mean, pretty much everybody who was out there has had some type of experience with the police, a negative experience, from elderly women to young men to, you know, sometimes in a lot of cases, young children as well. And so basically what I've seen is just that people are like voicing their frustration with a system that they don't feel like is really protecting them, and that they don't really feel like has their best interest in mind. And so you see that frustration coming out with people coming out into the streets, but also like with some of the things that people are saying to police officers while, you know, during the protest. So.
You know, I want to get your perspective on something that at least I feel I'm seeing when I was on the east side, and when I feel I'm seeing these demonstrations, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but it feels to me and it looks to me as if the folks in the streets are not just activists. Your everyday activists who come out for demonstrations.
That's very, very true.
We're seeing community people out there, and I've seen signs in my drive past Gilmore Homes the other day when I just stopped by to see somebody, and there's signs in the windows of regular people's homes saying, "Is your water cut off?" Black Lives Matter. I mean, there's something bubbling up that's like making a political fervor from the bottom up. That has nothing to do with the activists coming in. It has to do with the people knowing what's going on and wanting to push out.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, like the situation in Ferguson and across the country, really, in California and New York. I think that people are seeing that they have a power, and I really will tip my hat off to the folks in Ferguson for kind of sparking that off, and like giving people that sense of like ownership over their communities, and especially because that movement was led by young people. And so, you know, it's really great to see a lot of young black men, young black women out in the streets who have no real experience necessarily in organizing, but they're just really passionate about the issue. And, you know, I think that they feel like if folks in other places can take to the streets and they can have their voices heard to a certain extent, then they can do the same exact thing. And so I think that level of empowerment is super important when it comes to movement building, because a lot of times you don't really see movements, like we like to talk a lot about grassroots, but you don't really see everyday people coming out in the streets and really talking about the things that they want to see happen in their community. What I'm hoping is just that at some point, you know, that people can kind of channel that energy into something. The same thing with Ferguson. That was my argument, is that we can channel that energy into something that is a lot more concrete, so that people can change the conditions that they're living in on an everyday basis. Like, you know, police brutality is one thing, and that's super important, and it's definitely a part of, you know, living in a racist, white supremacist system. But it's definitely important that people change the circumstances of the poverty that they're living in, and, you know, to help one another gain more opportunity and stuff. So I'm hoping to see that, you know, kind of spiral out of this.
Tawanda, also, I mean, because you've kept up these demonstrations because of your brother and others, but what's taking off now, I think, partially because of your continued consistent stand-up and protest, is this broadening of things. You've been out there most every day, haven't you?
Yes, every day, yes. Yeah.
So I'm curious what you think, how this has changed, how it's changed what you've seen from your family and your supporters in the block standing up every week, but this has gotten so much broader and larger. What are your thoughts about where it might be going?
My thoughts are, I'm just praying that everything like works out, because what I'm seeing is everybody is disappointed. Like, everybody's disappointed. I see a lot, like, we all are hurt when any type of tragedy happens and things like that. But right now, I'm seeing so many hurt people. Like, you can feel the anger. Like, it's almost, I'm not even going to lie, like, I'm almost kind of, like, scared to literally go out there, you know, because it's just so hostile. And it's just like, and then with people being peaceful, and you're going to barricade people from, you know, public property, that's just like really, you know. And it's like, you already know people are upset, angry. Instead of them like saying positive things to keep things down, nobody's saying nothing, you know. And it's disgusting. And I feel like everybody's tension is up, like sky high, like, 'cause everybody is tired of, like, even though, like, our city now is in the spotlight, but our emotions and tensions been here since we heard about Trayvon Martin. You know, people felt some kind of way. Because my brother Tyrone West was one of the people that felt some type of way. He was telling me there's a Zimmerman on every corner. We had this discussion the day he was brutally murdered here. So it's like we are tired. Enough. We need real change now. And we're not asking for nothing but something that's due to us. And that's justice. How can you not give us justice?
So I'm curious everybody's kind of thoughts on what the mayor. I'm going to ask all of our panelists the response to the city government so far, and what you've seen of the response to the city government. I mean, there was a huge article in the Sun this morning about the mayor and others who were part of the National Conference of Mayors and how they started talking about how to respond to this.
Don't test it down,
after
folks.
what happened in Ferguson and what
Right
they
back.
would do.
Part
And there's
two.
been I've seen mixed